Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming today. We just ask that you please silence all of your electronic devices. During today's ceremony, you'll be given cues of when to stand and when to be seated. As a reminder, today's service is an indoor event, and during the playing of the national anthem and taps, active duty personnel in uniform will stand at attention. Civilians should stand and place their right hand over their heart. Well, welcome today to the memorial service of Richard P. Buckreis. I'm Crosby Shatarian, and I'll be your master of ceremonies today. The host for today's service is Colonel Matthew Caspers, Vice Commander of the 412th Test Wing. Now I'd ask that you would all please stand for the posting of the colors by the Blue Eagles Honor Guard, the playing of our national anthem, and also please remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of Mr. Richard Buckreis. We'll now take a moment of silence. And thank you to the Blue Eagles Honor Guard. Please remain standing for the invocation delivered by Mr. John Perry.
Let us pray. We stand before you, Heavenly Father, as we gather in your name, with you alone to guide us. Make your presence in our hearts. Teach us to show love and kindness to others, as you have shown love and kindness to us. Enable us to be brave in our remembering, honest in our sorrows, and open in love and compassion to each other. Help us seek not many answers to our questions of why, but rather have patience to mourn and grieve. Enable us to remember with joy of those we have loved. Send us your prayers. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. You may be seated. Well, it's with a very heavy heart that we're gathered here today to pay tribute to Mr. Richard P. Buckreis. We'd like to acknowledge the presence of his family, Mr. Buckreis' wife, Judith, his daughter, Erica, Mr. Buckreis' brother, Mrs. Buckreis' brother, Mr. Robert Dalton, Miss Buckreis' godfather, Mr. William Billy Thomas, Mr. Thomas's wife, Miss Carol Ann Thomas, Mr. Thomas's father, and Mr. Buckreis' good friend, Mr. Charles Tex Thomas. Thank you guys for coming today. And from the 412th Test Wing, we have Brigadier General I don't have David on here. And David. Anybody else? All right, we got David. From the 412th Test Wing, we have Brigadier General Matthew Heiger, Commander, Colonel Matthew Kaspers, Vice Commander, Command Chief Master Sergeant Denisha Ward Swanigan, Senior Technical Director Daniel Osborne, and there was a new one, Mr. Kevin Casing, Director of Staff, Air Force Test Center, and Mr. Mike Paoli, Director of Public Affairs. We'd also like to acknowledge and thank all the commanders, leaders, extended family, friends, and coworkers in attendance today. We truly appreciate you all for being here as we pay our respects. And now I would like to welcome Colonel Kaspers to say a few words about Mr. Buckreis.
Thank you all for taking the time to gather and celebrate Rick's life and remember his contributions to the men and women of the graphics shop, public affairs, Edwards Air Force Base, and our local communities. We are here in communion to mourn his loss, to console one another, and to support Judith and Erica and his family and close friends. Judith and Erica, on behalf of the United States Air Force and the men and women of Edwards Air Force Base, I offer our deepest sympathy and condolences to you. We are incredibly humbled to be here with you today, and no words can capture the depth of our collective sadness in the wake of Rick's passing. Please know that we are forever grateful for Rick's decades of faithful service to the Air Force and to our nation. Sadly, I didn't have the honor of knowing Rick. Since his passing, I have learned that Rick Buckreis was one of the most kind-hearted and dedicated government servants that each of us may ever know. He carried a serious demeanor and quiet humility that he coupled with an extraordinary dedication to duty and expert craftsmanship. He began his 45-year career in the Air Force as a graphics intern in the late 1970s. Already a phenomenally talented artist, Rick continued to hone his craft and quickly became a go-to workhorse for graphics work at Edwards Air Force Base, and eventually worked his way up to leading the team as chief. Rick was a gifted artist capable of rendering extraordinarily lifelike depictions of animals with pencils and pens well before the advent of computer-aided design. As you can see, the art that his family have brought in here for us to share. His talented eye and the camera he often carried captured thousands of images of the natural beauty of the Mojave Desert. Rick and his daughter Erica built a massive collection of stock images of iconic wildlife and landscapes linked to Edwards Air Force Base. Though most uncredited, each of us have probably stood and been caught staring in awe of his work. You can see many of these photos in the halls of the buildings here on base. The photo collages in the elevators and the large-scale photo murals in the wing building all bear the hallmarks of Rick's expert hand. Most recently, Rick led the design of the photo hallways in the newly renovated Air Force Test Center headquarters building. Besides contributing many of the pieces himself, he was the architect for technical innovations in building the showcase. Rick encouraged a departure from the usual matting and framing. Instead, the images were printed on giant adhesive film and applied directly to the wall, a solution making it both economical and easy to maintain. Now, while this might seem a very strange innovation to an Edwards outsider, this new method is absolutely brilliant. No longer do we have to walk up and down the halls, straightening all the photos after another soul-rattling sonic boom. Now, as a customer of the graphics shop, meeting Rick for the first time, you might be caught a bit off guard by his serious and gruff demeanor. But you'd quickly discover that he had your best interests at heart. He was especially talented at helping people figure out what they really needed in the first place. Often, customers would roll in at the last minute asking for some very specific products. I just need a 10 by 14 poster, 12-point font, blue background, little airplane. Oh, and by the way, I need it tomorrow. Now, first, he would let you know in no uncertain terms that asking at the last minute isn't the right way to get things done. And he'd probably say something like, well, we have a bit of a catch-22 on our hands. But with your scolding out of the way, he'd take the time to understand your requirement, and he'd coach you through describing what you actually really need. And by the time he was done, rarely did you walk out with what you thought you were going to walk out with, because he had made a far better product, and it was the thing you actually needed. He'd go the extra mile to make sure that you had the signs, programs, photos, certificate, flyers, or mission maps that you needed and when you needed them. He knew the rules, and he knew the AFIs. He knew the tools of the trade, and he knew how to get the job done right, and everyone on this installation recognized him as an expert that wouldn't let the mission fail. But more important than his craftsmanship with the pencil and the camera was his skill and passion for helping people. Rick went out of his way to put people first and to serve others. Even before he was the chief of the graphics shop, he took the lead onboarding and mentoring interns and new hires, showing them the ropes of government service and cultivating their craftsmanship. He would grow their talents by listening, closely observing their strengths, coaching, and providing honest mentorship. Despite little formal leadership training, Rick was an invested supervisor. He led from the front, taking on difficult jobs himself and fairly distributing the workload for his teammates. His humility permeated his leadership style, and he rarely, if ever, accepted credit and instead passed the customer's praise on to the rest of the team. Rick was generous with his time in all aspects of his life, not just in the graphics shop or in public affairs. He volunteered with the Kern County Sheriff's Desert Search and Rescue Team and substantially drove down the fatalities over holiday weekends. He also helped the less fortunate, the residents of Boron, make their ends meet by helping with home maintenance and delivering bulk food donations. To be honest, I am not sure how he did it all. Somehow, I think that Rick figured out a way to have a 30-hour day while the rest of us are stuck with just 24. A talented cook, he organized office potlucks and smoked the most amazing tri-tip, brisket, and turkey to help bring people together in community. At Christmas, he'd bring an extra gift or two just to make sure that no one was left out when someone invariably forgot to bring a gift. Rick also gave freely of his time to the Edwards Air Force Base Civilian Military Support Group and helped fundraise and in turn support the airmen of Edwards. He played a key role in transporting donated items that CivMil collected or purchased in town at estate sales and thrift shops. After one particularly large find, the team realized they had no way to get their newly acquired furniture donations over to the airman's attic. They called Rick, and before they could finish asking, he was already on his way with the truck. Rick was also the pitmaster for the CivMil's signature fundraising event, the annual summer barbecue. A meticulous planner, determined to maximize proceeds for the event, Rick began preparing months in advance for the July barbecue. He'd stockpile supplies, working his connections to garner donations from local businesses to make sure he could get the best deals. And then on game day, you'd find him behind the smoker and the grills, prepping and serving hundreds of patrons and making the event a memorable success. As I prepared for today, I was privileged to hear the many memories and stories that Rick's colleagues, friends, and family shared with me. These remembrances painted a picture of a selfless servant leader who spoke primarily through his craft and his deeds. While the Air Force core values have been officially codified as integrity, service, and excellence for as long as I have been in the Air Force, Rick joined the Air Force at a time when our service struggled with its identity and its values. He exemplified these core values not only in the workplace, but in his whole life. But he didn't just live these values, he helped shape them as we know them today. Rick played an outsized part in institutionalizing and inculcating these values for the Air Force and for Edwards. Saying goodbye to our loved ones is a heart-wrenching experience compounded with shock and surprise when we lose them suddenly and unexpectedly. The journey through grief and toward healing is a long and difficult path that is different for every one of us, and we must recognize that healing will take different forms for the many lives that he touched. Few people contribute to a community as much as Rick did, and Rick's passing leaves a massive hole in our hearts and in our community. Rick's authentic dedication to caring for people remind us of the value of relationships. As we return to our pre-pandemic habits and fall prey to the urgencies of the day, we may be tempted to hurry past people in need of our help. I challenge each of us to honor Rick's memory and cement his legacy by pausing and considering how we can pick up where Rick left off. He loved to be the man behind the camera, always focusing on others. And now it's time for us to take a turn and each pick up a camera and focus on those around us.
Thank you, Colonel Kaspers. I would now like to invite Mr. Paley to share a few words about Mr. Buckreis.
Thank you, Crosby. And Judy and Erica, there are about 36 people here today that were blessed to know Rick not only as a friend but as a colleague. For 6 people here, he was a boss and a mentor recently for some of them and in days past for a few that showed up here today. I didn't know Rick, but I've gained a glimpse of his impact. As I shared with Judy, my very first phone call to public affairs was met with tears on the other end of the line and the words, "My friend." And with those words and others shared with me these past days, I've learned a little about Rick. So I'll add just a few more characterizations to what Colonel Kaspers has presented. Rick, as we heard, was a 45-year Air Force company man, shooting for 50. He never asked to be chief of a highly creative graphics team. He was appointed to the position because he was not only a master of his trade, but he had that leadership gene that was recognized in him. A member of our team was sweltering in the summer heat, and Rick led an effort to refurbish and install a swamp cooler in the member's home. Not a big deal for him. He could tear down houses to the frame and build them back up again, right? And it was Rick who repaired the roof at the Boron Senior Center. And as we've heard, he was as adept with the brush and pencil as with the hammer and nail. The U.S. flag and eagles that you passed on the way in and the eagle to your left, both drawn and painted by Rick. Last week, Public Affairs had its monthly potluck. It was pulled pork. It was absolutely delicious. Who made it, I asked. What do you think the answer was? Rick did. Rick did. He cooked the main course for every potluck without compensation, and we were enjoying the last of his food. The leadership and the compassion, caring, and selflessness went beyond his team. I've learned that he was passionate about his people, and his people was anyone he decided to take under his wing. Maybe you needed groceries delivered. He did this for people he knew. Or maybe you were a stranger and you still needed groceries delivered. He came through for you. He volunteered at food banks and the Boron Senior Center, among other volunteer activity. For a major government food program, he would receive, coordinate the packing, and deliver groceries to those in need, and then deliver the leftovers to churches and shelters throughout the area. Out-of-pocket expenses were not an issue. No hesitation. He had a special affinity for those with medical disabilities. He gave friendship, caring, support. He gave his time and his labor. Some of you who have received some of that are here today. To quote the somber words from a member of his creative team, he was an institution and is sorely missed. And absolutely a big brother. His impact was deep and wide. As you might imagine, this will not be the only celebration of Rick's life. There will be another one this weekend at the Boron Senior Center. But for us here, Judy and Erica, and on behalf of his public affairs team and his very dear friends, and with great love, he will be sorely missed.
Thank you, Mr. Paoli. I would now like to invite Erica to come up and say a few words. Erica is Mr. Buckreis' daughter.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. That I am Erica Buckreis, his daughter. That my mother, Judith Buckreis, and Robin Dalton, his brother-in-law, and I would like to thank everybody. I know my father affected so many people's life, and by seeing everybody here today really shows how many lives he affected. He donated thousands of hours of time to over dozens of nonprofit organizations over the 40 years that he was here in the Antelope Valley area. His main volunteer group was the Kern County Sheriff's Desert Search and Rescue Team, where he's been a member for almost 20 years. He's been an admin lieutenant for over 15 years. He received 2 major volunteer awards in his lifetime, including the Presidential Volunteer Service Award, the Lifetime Award, which to receive that award, you have to have over 4,000 documented volunteer hours. And the other major volunteer award he received was the Air Force Volunteer Excellence Award for his volunteer efforts at Edwards and the surrounding communities. This award was established to recognize federal civilians, family members, military retirees, and federal retirees who performed outstanding volunteer service award and can only be presented once in a volunteer's lifetime. My father was quoted when given this award that I think people will appreciate to hear because it really truly sounds like him and his motives. He said, "I really didn't expect this. This is an award you hear about, and I've only known one person who's received this award in my lifetime. When you volunteer your time, it is not about what you get, but it's about what you're giving. So to be recognized like this was an honor," said Buckreis. "At the end of the day, though, it's not what I do it for. Someone saying thank you means a lot more than anything else. And I hope the time I spend volunteering encourages the younger generations and others to carry on the same path. I know several people in this room that have donated their time to several different groups due to my father putting it as a priority. I know I've followed in his footsteps already by spending hundreds and thousands of hours of volunteering because I've also received the Presidential Volunteer Service Award Lifetime Award, and I got that at age 21. So this was due to him encouraging me from a young age to give back to the community. So I know that I am carrying down the same path that he started. Sorry. In the last 48 hours of his life, I spent a majority of the time with him, and he volunteered with 3 different organizations. The first one was the Boron Senior Citizens Center, where he led the food pantry, where there was over 200 families that attended, and afterwards he drove around and passed out food for over a dozen other families that were either housebound or too sick to come in person. The next day, he played Santa at the 20 Meal Team Museum for at least the documented 36th year in a row, where at that event, 75 kids and their families attended. Later that evening, he worked with the Desert Search and Rescue team and to coordinate the barricades of how to run the parade to make sure it was ran smoothly while he was on the fire department truck playing Santa. And there was at least 200 people that attended the parade. So over one weekend, he directly or indirectly affected over 1,000 people's lives due to his volunteer efforts. And then just even the next day, he worked with a local community leader of passing and moving out food that was not used that Friday to go to other local communities so food waste did not happen on his watch. So over the years, especially through his volunteering and networking, he made a lot of friends and family. My dad used to say, if you could count on one hand all your true friends that would drop anything to help you, you are a lucky person. When my mom and I made the call to people, letting them know of the news, we had more than 5 people that came that did not just do nothing after the call, that I had people moving hay to make sure that animals were fed or fed for the week. I had people comforting the family. I had people coordinating to making sure that the body and everything was handled smoothly. So my dad definitely had more than just 5 friends that he always said if you could count on one hand, that you were a lucky person. So I definitely want us to thank a few people in groups that has helped the family. That I definitely want to recognize Edwards Air Force Base and their leadership for helping during this challenging process of not just attending here, but helping through the process of making sure that everything was running smoothly. I also want to thank the Air Force Flight Test Museum for hosting this event that is definitely an honor to the family, especially since I know my dad spent so much time helping the museum in one way or another. So this is a great honor and a respect to the family. Then I want to thank the Desert Search and Rescue team and their members, that there are several here today, that they're like a second family to us. And they've helped in multiple ways, including me going through my first responder survivor guilt. That we also want to thank the Public Affairs Office for helping coordinate this event and to being here, because that was also a second family to my father and to my mother and I. I would like to say a special thanks to Tex Thomas, Carol Ann Thomas, for being here and helping the family. I want to definitely thank Tracy McCoy Wellner for being just a right-hand man or woman to me, just helping getting things done here on base, that she's definitely moved mountains for the family and really helped coordinate this celebration of life, and we are greatly appreciative. And then I also want to thank Billy Thomas, who has been not just a big brother to me, but has acted as my left-hand man, just handling everything on the property, especially the cows and birds that we had to take care of, that my dad had a local ranch and that was his hobby. That it took a lot of work, but between the two of us, we were able to handle everything, or majority of the main things, in a quick and easy manner. The next person I want to thank is David Hill for just being my front man, being able to address multiple things. That when my dad was out of town, he was always there calling, helping my mom, fixing miscellaneous things around the house, and he has continued that efforts after his passing. And last but not least, Michelle Slade, that she's definitely had my back during this process of making sure things were handled in an appropriate manner, and definitely making sure everything was running smoothly, since she just recently went through this process herself. That we will be having a slideshow later that hopefully people can remember some good memories of my father. If anybody has photos of my father, please send them to me or the Public Affairs Office to get them to the family, because like I've already stated, he was definitely the guy behind the camera, not in front of it. So you'll see in the slideshow that most of them were my photos that I've caught of him, and he will be wearing orange because he was mostly the one that was at scenes or doing something. So definitely a guy that definitely did not like taking credit, but luckily I was able to capture some of those memories and moments. And that the family is requesting people to write letters, memories, that up at front there is the memory book, but there's also cards that you can definitely write on and put it in the bird cage for my mother and I to open at a later time. That we definitely appreciate any memories. So you can write them down, you can speak today, or you can find me after the fact and I can voice record, whatever anybody's preference is. So because my dad did so many good deeds, and we understand and know some of them, but we don't know the memories behind those actions, and we just don't want to lose them. And so I definitely want to thank everybody for attending, and if anybody knows of anybody that couldn't attend this one, there will be another celebration of life happening this Saturday at the Boron Senior Citizens Center, and that will be at 11 o'clock. And I just greatly appreciate everybody attending, and thank you.
Thank you, Erica. I would now like to open the podium to anybody else that would like to share any memories that they may have of Rick.
Sorry, I thought I wrote this down, but I didn't. That also, if anybody did not or was not able to attend today or on Saturday, that I will definitely make it available if you send me the contact of anybody to have access to the slideshow for memories or to a recording, just to make sure everybody's included and can respect.
My name is Dave Van Hoy. I have nothing prepared, but I wanted to tell a few stories to the family. Longtime engineer here at Edwards. I was trying to keep up with Rick. He'd been here a lot longer than I had. And I remember him from the late 80s, early 90s. So this airplane was not flying yet. They were still building it. I was a young engineer. We were putting together a presentation for this really exciting aircraft flight test program that was going on. It was called the X-29. I went down to graphics and met Rick 3 decades ago. I had all these charts drafted out and what I wanted, and I had data and I had pictures. And I sat down with him, and I still remember to this day him just shaking his head, trying to straighten things out, and just like from what Casper says, eventually he goes, tell you what, leave it with me and come back in a little while, and I'll fix it for you. He put together this most amazing presentation, which was just, those acetates, but the color and the clarity of the data and the pictures, phenomenal. I'll get you a copy. I've still got that stuck away somewhere in my garage. Boss, there's nothing classified. It's all open. It was approved. I wish I had brought it today, and I didn't think about that in time. But he did exactly what you mentioned. He provided the product I needed. Not what I thought I wanted, but what I needed. And that started a 30-year relationship with Rick from a working standpoint. Now, I'm fortunate over the last probably 2 or 3 years to have some insight into all the things he did for the community. Incredible. I mean, absolutely incredible. His blessing to the community was unbelievable. And I think it's an example for what all of us would like to be like. I don't know how I found time to do it. I just really don't. Because on the work side, which I can tell more about, over 30 years or so, I would show up in graphics more than once a year. And no matter what the project was, no matter how small or how big or how bizarre, whether it was coins or slides or poster boards or videos, he always responded the same way. And you'll appreciate this because I always came in late. It was always last minute. I would always start out with, Rick, I'm sorry. He wouldn't smile like he is in this picture over here. Okay, well, I'm really busy, but there's a long line of things going on. I'm not sure when I'm going to get to this, and well, we'll see what we can do. And I'd lay things out and leave it with him. And he always under-promised and over-delivered. He is, I wasn't surprised at all when I hear about all the things he's done for the community because of all the people I've worked with in 30-some years here at the center. I can honestly say he was one of the few that never let me down. No matter what I left with him, no matter how hard it was, he would, no way, Van Hoy, we're not going to get this done. I don't know what you're thinking. And before it was due, before I had to leave to get on an airplane or make a presentation, I'd get the call. Hey, it's ready. Come on down. Phenomenal. And just, I know a little bit, and I don't know nearly as well as a lot of you do, but I imagine from the family standpoint, you really don't have an appreciation for his impact at work, because I don't think he ever talked about himself. And he probably didn't tell you the things he did here. But as I think about the folks that have had influence on flight tests in the last 3 decades that I've been involved, there are probably only a handful that's had a bigger impact than he has. He wasn't a pilot, he wasn't an engineer, he wasn't a maintainer, he didn't reduce data, he didn't make presentations, but the information that he provided the folks that got out there in the community, it made us all look good. I mean, he's reached millions of people with this message of how important our mission is. And you meet him on the street, you'd never know it. I mean, just one of the nicest, gruffest, biggest-hearted guys you'll ever meet. So just a little insight into things he did here. I hope that his example inspires other folks to be like him, because we need more people like Rick. He'll be sorely missed. Godspeed, Rick.
I'm going to break from my narrator duties and go on to a story. Everybody's talking about what a giving soul he was, and nobody's really talked about the jokester that he was. And I'd like to tell a personal story that I got to experience when I first started in public affairs with Rick, where I'd asked for business cards, and I was heading to D.C. for an event, and I was like, I need these business cards within a couple of weeks, and I submitted them at the same time as somebody else. And I get an email back that said, okay, yours will be ready in 6 weeks. His will be ready in the end of the week. And I went, wait, what? And just cold stone, no nothing. And I'm freaking out. And I'm like, what like, but I need these. I'm leaving. And, and he's like, nope, sorry. Ain't gonna happen. And so I'm like, kind of beside myself, like, what? Next morning I had a full stack of business cards on my desk. And I was like, you, man. But every conversation that I ever had with the man, you never knew how to read him, but you knew he cared. And I think that was the most beautiful thing about him. And in every meeting that I ever had with him, whether it was in a Chiefs huddle and in public affairs or whatever it was, I think it was you had said it, but it was just the tremendous, the idea that he had about his team and how much he cared about his team and how he protected his team. I mean, he was Papa Bear to that team. He cared so much about them and wanted to make sure that they were so taken care of. And there's somebody from our team who's not here, and he would make it a point to drive out to her house, no matter what day or time, to take care of her, to sit with her, to talk with her, to make sure that she was okay. And it was just amazing to see that caring heart. And it was hard because Mr. Van Hoy was exactly like you said. You didn't get to see it. He didn't talk about the things that he did, but when you got one-on-one with him, you knew that he cared. And it was remarkable when you would get those opportunities just to talk with him and share with him and talk about yourself with him and how much he truly paid attention and how much he truly cared about you. So, he was amazing. Outside of that rough, hard exterior, he was a very sweet man. Was there anybody else I want to? All right, well, thank you guys so much. Mr. Perry, would you please come forward and deliver the benedictions now?
O God of your creation, we pause at this memorial to acknowledge again your sovereignty over our lives and our country. We remember you, Rick, that has departed this life. We honor him for his loyalty to his family and his country, for his good deeds, and for his friendships. May he rest in peace, and may the good work that has begun in him be brought to perfection, that our nation may be stronger and our people secure and happy. The psalmist writes in the Old Testament in Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yes, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod, your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Family, friends, a golden heart has stopped beating. Hard-working hands have been laid to rest. God broke our hearts to prove to us he only takes the best. We love you, Rick.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Now, at this time, I'd ask you all to stand for the playing of taps. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please be seated for the folding of the flag ceremony by the Blue Eagles Honor Guard. Now, if you can make your attention to the TV screen, there's a video that was put together of Mr. Buckreis and his life.
When I think back on these times and the dreams we left behind, I'll be glad 'cause I was blessed to get to have you in my life. When I look back on these days, I'll look and see your face. You were right there for me. In my dreams, I'll always see you soar above the sky. In my heart, there'll always be a place for you for all my life. I'll keep a part of you with me, and everywhere I am, there you'll be. And everywhere I am, there you'll be. Will you show me how it feels to feel the sky within my reach? And I always will remember all the strength you gave to me. Your love made me make it through. Oh, I owe so much to you. You were right there for me. In my dreams, I'll always see you soar above the sky. In my heart, there'll always be a place for you for all my life. I'll keep a part of you with me, and everywhere I am, there you'll be. 'Cause I always saw in you my light, my strength. And I wanna thank you now for all the ways you were right there for me. You were right there for me. In my dreams, I'll always see you soar above the sky. In my heart, there'll always be a place for you for all my life. I'll keep a part of you with me, and everywhere I am, there you'll be. And everywhere I am, there you'll be. There you'll be.
I remember Daddy's hands, how they held my mama tight and patted my back for something done right. There are things that I've forgotten that I loved about the man, but I'll always remember the love in Daddy's hands. Daddy's hands were soft and kind when I was crying. Daddy's hands were hard as steel when I'd done wrong. Daddy's hands weren't always gentle, but I've come to understand. There was always love in Daddy's hands. I remember Daddy's hands working till they bled, sacrificed unselfishly just to keep us all fed. If I could do were soft and kind when I was crying. Daddy's hands were hard as steel when I'd done wrong. Daddy's hands were always gentle, but I've come to understand there was always love in Daddy's hands.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the memorial service for Mr. Buckreis. And I know it's probably uncomfortable to get up here and talk, so the family will be available to up here at the end of this, the service if you'd like to talk to them personally and share any stories or remembrances that you have with them. So after this, the ceremony ends, our hors d'oeuvres will be served in the little area back over there. On behalf of the Buckreis family and the members of the 412th Test Wing, we thank you all for coming today. Thank you.